So I need to get back on the money thing for a second. I need to get back on the slavery thing for a second, because it all does come together in the end, as we get further and further towards the day to make more sense. And we've been taught a lot of things in school, and so when we hear what I'm saying about gold and silver and money, how it comes into existence and how it gets translated to the population and why, it really sounds like a lot of craziness. But I want to show you, and I want you to study and read for yourself and see how these things are actually true, that they really did happen. I mean, you probably go to Wikipedia for the vast majority of this to see these statements, to see they're true. When dollar bills were created, when Abraham Lincoln gave the Emancipation Proclamation, when Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, when Secret Service was created, you see all that, see the dates and stuff for all that, and see, wow, yeah, they actually do chain right together in the same year within like 90 days of themselves. But how does that matter? Like, so they put out these dollar bills, right? Well, the shop owner can still charge like $1,000 if he wants for an apple, right? He gets to decide. He's the one who owns the apple. No. See, that's one of the reasons why when the dollar bills were put out, not only and why I call it a welfare program, and why I say slavery was made free for everyone to become a slave, is because these regulations put everyone in bondage. These regulations of how the currency must be used is what put everyone equally into bondage, not just the slaves who were just freed. They weren't freed. They were just put under a different yoke of bondage, and everyone else was included under that yoke of bondage. We just expanded. It exploded slavery. Now we have laws. They say, "Oh, you can't use money to buy and sell people." That obviously that's slavery. We're very much against it. Yes, those laws do exist today. Yes, they do, and I applaud those laws that exist. But they are almost a mockery. They're good intention, which is why I applaud them. But in the deepest sense, they are a mockery of the entire thing, because they're claiming that slavery is bad, and yet the currency itself is making everyone a slave. So if you wanted to be true to the essence, you would get rid of the currency. Go back to the barter, to the trade of goods, intellectual or otherwise. I mean, you say, well, I'm an engineer at a company. I don't actually produce anything. My company produces stuff, but I'm just an engineer who comes up with designs. There's no reason why to say you can't have profit from that. That's not a valuable trade for things. But that's a future video to get into. Gosh, that's when we get into some deep theory where you're like, wow, the rabbit hole is really deep on this. We can't get to that just yet, because I got to get back to the money and how it spreads and why it becomes such a big deal, why everyone uses it today and not gold and silver. So we're at the end of the Civil War. The Emancipation Proclamation has been given. Money is starting to be issued. And of course, with money, like you say, we have a law today. So again, why can't he charge $1,000 for an apple? Well, just like laws today. How come when a storm or anything hits, gas stations can't jump the prices of gas up to $100 a gallon before a hurricane, so that they can make more money off the people who are trying to? We call that what is that called? Actually, price gouging. Wow, I had to think about that for a second. It's price gouging. So it's against the law to do, and you can report that, and they will get fined and maybe even arrested and shut down. So yeah, that existed back then too, price gouging, which is what makes it part of the welfare, which makes it part of the control of everyone, to make everyone a slave, is so you no longer have the right to even say what your wares are worth, because you're not bartering them anymore. They're being traded with a common currency that has been created and is being regulated centrally by a government. So you've lost your power, in that you've given up your freedom to decide what you or your wares are worth. Because if you charge too much of that common currency, then you will be charged with charging too much. That the government doesn't believe that what you're saying your stuff is worth, it's actually worth that. They don't believe that. They're calling you a liar, and they're calling you a thief, and that you must be arrested and charged. So you've lost your freedom to decide what things are worth. More importantly, or just as importantly, I guess, if you're getting paid in currency, then you are being told what you are worth, because you're only worth what you're being paid in currency, and the government is deciding what that currency is worth in trade, because again, they're deciding what businesses can sell their wares for. So they're, in a way, cornering the market, which again is what we would call illegal, to take a monopoly or corner something so that no one else can have any kind of freedom to effectively create change on that. Yeah, that's what the government has done. They've created a way to where you are worth so much in value of this currency per hour that you commit to labor, and that your income can be used for trade at these businesses, and that they will not charge you more than so much that the government decides is a fair price. to be paid for something. And if they jack their prices up, then of course they can be charged and stuff for that. So this starts to happen, and this is what's happening at the end of the Civil War. And don't get me wrong, a lot of people try to do what I thought was the great idea in the last one, in one of the last videos, where I said that why wouldn't they just pay them in a portion of the crop? Do crop sharing. They get a portion of the crop they help produce, they sell it, trade it for whatever they want, and they make their living off that. That's absolutely a great idea. That should have been what happened. There's no reason why that shouldn't have been what happened. But again, the purpose wasn't to free slaves. It was not the purpose. The purpose was to make slavery free. Again, this comes back to my job. If your idea is to do something for the population to change things, and you think it's going to be crazy that the population is going to reject it, then you have to find a way to term it, to word it in such a way that they not only agree, but are willing to lay down their lives and fight, that they are willing to work for it willingly to create this effect, to make this happen. And that is what happened with ending slavery, with creating mass slavery, basically, under Abraham Lincoln, is that we created a different form of slavery. We just expanded upon it, allowed more people to be included into the group of slaves, to be bought and sold. Think of it this way. Very rudimentary way of thinking about it, okay? But you have rich people today who have servants, right? But they pay their servants a wage, so it's not slavery, right? Now, what do we believe made slaves back in 1861? Well, there was a couple things. One, they didn't get paid anything, meaning that their value at the end of the day had nothing. They were given food, they were given clothing basically to keep them barely clothed, but they were given the necessities of life: shelter, food, water, clothing, to keep them living, not thriving, but to keep them living, so they could keep working for their master, and basically no more. In fact, it would be troublesome to give them more, because they might use that to try and escape or get away, right? To not do the job they were doing anymore, because they didn't want to do that job. They were doing it because they had to. They were being forced to. They were also beaten when they tried to run away and stuff. So that's a big difference. I'm going to get into that in a few minutes, but they were also beaten, and they could have been killed for doing it, and that's a big difference too. One of the things that made slavery so terrible. So now that's ended. Now let's go back today again. You have rich people who have servants. Do they pay their servants enough to where if they wanted to, those servants could leave and go do another job? No. That's the whole purpose of the currency to begin with. You're still being in the same job and being paid a wage that is just enough to give you your essentials. It's just enough to give you food, water, and shelter, and you have to go get it on your own. Like, the slave owner isn't providing you the food, water, and shelter anymore, I guess, unless you live in like government-assisted housing or something where they let you live for free. Well, then you're getting basically from a slave owner, because the government is a slave owner, free housing. If you get food stamps, free food, free water, free assistance stuff, you're getting it for free. But you're being given it in such a way to keep you in that, cycle. It's not anything extra to give you enough more, because that's troublesome. You might leave and get out of that. That's what I'm getting at today. Slavery still exists. It's just translated, because you're in the Matrix. Farley Brothers. No, it's not the Farley Brothers. It was the Wachowski brothers that did the Matrix. The Matrix. You're asleep. You're in an illusion, and the illusions is money, and the illusions is. Let's just stick with money for right now. Let's just keep it simple and stick with money. One of the illusions is keeping you massively asleep is money. And you really just need to wake up from that. It is fake. You can be independent. You don't have to depend on government to give you money for food, water, shelter. You don't have to depend on another person to give you money for food, water, and shelter. You can get it. You can do it. You can survive. Your family can survive and be independent. That is freedom. Fun fact, in the Declaration of Independence, it does not say that you are endowed with inalienable rights, meaning life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It does not say that. It says You are endowed with your Creator with inalienable rights, being life, liberty, and land. Land, because land was happiness. Why was land happiness? Because the king ruled everything before America became America. England, the king ruled everything. He's the one that gave you land. Land is what you needed to have food, to produce animals, or to produce livestock, to produce livestock, but to produce agricultural foods and wares, to build anything, to invent anything, to create anything that you could sell. You needed land. And not anyone could just have that. They had to live on someone else's land, which means it had to be under their authority. They weren't free. And so that's why the founder said, oh, okay, well, you are endowed with your Creator with 3 inalienable rights. Life, can't take away your life for no reason. Liberty, meaning freedom to do the things you see fit to do without hurting anyone else. And land, which is where you get your happiness. We changed it to happiness. We changed it to happiness later on. You want to look up a fun fact? Wikipedia. Look that up. Google that. When did we change from land to happiness? When did that happen? Maybe that means something the year it happened, right? Maybe I should just leave that Easter egg out there for you to check on your own time. So let's get that straight. Things are a lot different. But getting back to the point now, which is what I wanted to talk to you about, was after the Civil War, how did money get to be the big thing it is today, and not gold and silver? Family actually comes into this one. Last name House. A long time ago. Early 1900s. So, but let's go back further. Let's go back to the end of the Civil War. Crop sharing is happening, and it's working, but dollar bills are actually going out. There's not a lot of confidence from the people. I mean, anyone with common sense looked at it back and they say, no, I don't want to take dollar bills because they're not worth anything. They're worthless. You have no gold or no silver or anything backing it up. And the American government said, yeah, we actually do have gold and silver reserves, and we're going to issue these dollars as promissory notes to where if you want, you can exchange them back in for gold and silver. Don't get me wrong, they did do that. They did do that in the beginning. That was the selling point. What they tried to use hardcore for the selling point of these, saying that, yes, we're going to issue these dollar bills and we're only going to print so many. Now, I told you in a previous article, or previous video, that they just printed as they saw need and fit, and that is absolutely true. But that's not what they told the people. They told the people was, there's gold and silver backing it up that we have stored, and that we're only printing as much as would equal out to the gold and silver. But again, how do you decide what each dollar is worth in that gold or silver? That just means you're deciding that. It's not a market that's deciding it. It's just a government that's deciding it, saying, all right, each dollar is worth $1 worth of gold. What's the gold worth? Let's say gold is worth $100 an ounce at this time. Definitely not worth $100 an ounce today. We're talking like $1,300 today, high 12s to low 1300s today an ounce. But let's just say $100 an ounce. So does $100 equal 1 ounce? Is $1 1/100th of an ounce? Like, how do you decide how it translates, what that dollar actually breaks down to, and how many dollars it takes to make that ounce? In fact, it would be argued, well, that's how they got away with printing as much as they wanted. See, as you printed more, each dollar became worth less in value. That's what we call inflation deflation, basically. The more you print with the less backing of it, the less it's worth. The less you have with the more backing of it, the more it's worth. So if you only got 100 $1 bills and there's 1 ounce of gold and they're each worth 1/100th of an ounce. But if you print 900 more, then they go from being worth 1/100th of an ounce to 1/1000th of an ounce. They've decreased in value by a factor of 10, proportional to the amount printed as to the amount used to back it. But again, that is all false. Like, the whole backing principle was the sham to begin with. We're all so caught up in the math of how it's going to work out to what it's worth that we don't even realize the very foundation of it, the gold and silver it's based off of, is already false to begin with. So we're creating fallacy off of fallacy. That's one of the ways manipulations sell. It's all about distraction. How are magicians and illusionists so good as they distract you while they're creating the trick? Why do they always joke? Why do the Yankees always win the World Series? You can't take your eyes off the pinstripes. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, you're distracted. You can't see what you're supposed to be doing because you're too busy trying to focus on something you're not supposed to be doing. It doesn't even matter. And that's what's happening with the dollar bills here. So people are still not really crazy about dollar bills. Like 1870, 1880, 1890. These dollar bills are getting pumped out. That's not a problem. The problem is people just really aren't taking them. They really just don't want them. And growth is happening. Don't get me wrong, but growth is happening because of trading in gold and silver. Like, why would we get these dollar bills from you that you say we can go out of our way to give back to you and get gold or silver for, when we could just use the gold and silver we already have? And if we don't have gold and silver, we just got tomatoes or potatoes or meat, whatever, we can just use that. Why would I go and trade my meat for dollar bills? Because at that point, I don't even get to decide what my meat is worth. The person giving me the dollar bills gets to decide what my meat is worth based off what the gold standard is. Like, I'm not even valuing my cows that way, because cows produce milk and gold produces nothing. So we're looking at valuation completely differently right now. My value, you're getting to decide what my value is because you're issuing a currency, where that is not appropriate at all. My value is issued by what I'm providing. And so again, no one wanted to take the currency. I'm just going to take my cow to market and sell it that way, the way we've done for hundreds of years. Why would I change that? And they'll give me gold or silver for it, and then I can take that gold and silver and trade it. Why do I care about these dollar bills? So again, not very well received. Does not go over very well in the beginning. In the first 30, 40 years, it's not going over very well. People are not taking the dollar bill. So we get the turn of the century. And as we get to the turn of the century, we're getting really, really hardcore into the Industrial Revolution. Now, this is where it starts to get important, where dollar bills start to make a bigger appearance. So, because the Industrial Revolution is happening, a lot of people are moving from jobs where there is a physical commodity at the end of the day that they can be handed, to jobs where there is not a physical commodity at the end of the day where they personally can be handed. And as a perfect example, I would say Mr. Ford producing the Model T car, which in the early 1900s, creating the factories for it. So you got these factory workers who are helping to create parts at the end of the day, would create a Model T Ford. But at the end of the day, they don't get the Model T Ford. They're not making enough for each one of them when they go out and sell it. No, instead, they have to get paid a wage. And Mr. Ford isn't growing tomatoes or potatoes or cows or whatever in the backyard to give these guys as currency at the end of the day, as trade for their value and work. Instead, he's going to pay them hourly based on a predetermined wage by the central government, who is issuing a currency. He's going to give them the currency instead. I'm going to give them gold or silver, give them the currency. And so a lot of people start getting currency. If you go into the industrial trades, you start getting a currency, money paper, because there is no commodity to give you. Well, we're starting to move along because there's only so much of the population that's doing it. So while currency is coming out, it's still not being as enveloped in society as it should be. Like, there's a vast chasm between the industrial workers and the agrarian workers. Industrial workers are kind of stuck where they are. They can't just leave and move out to the country area to become farmers because their currency is really worthless out there at that point. They're still trading with gold and silver and bartering. You're not going to just move out to Montana like you would today and be like, I'm going to buy a farm for $100,000 or $100, whatever, because the person selling the farm probably doesn't want your $100. It's like, as much as the law says they can't not accept it as payment for what they want, they're going to find another way to not sell it to you because they don't want to accept the $100. They would rather take one cow or something like that, anything that equals the equivalent of that, but they just don't want $100 because then they have to hold on to that and use it, and it's not worth anything. It doesn't do anything. So it's not like today. Back then, people are stuck where they are. If you're an industrial worker, you're kind of stuck in that position, or in that city area, because you can only use your money really there reliably, faithfully. But now, in the early 1900s, that does start to change. And in about 1920, after World War I, America finally said, you know what? Enough is enough. Woodrow Wilson, with his nice friend, Colonel Edward Norman House, decided we need to find a way to get the dollar bill as the currency. You know what? No more of this junk with gold and silver. No more of this junk with bartering. It really just needs to be the dollar bill, because once it's just a dollar bill, then we can really start making laws to regulate the dollar bill. meaning, what you can and can't use it for. Because if we say that right now, they'll be like, oh, well, that's even more reason not to have it. We just use it gold or silver. Because if we get a dollar bill and we can't use it for certain things that we can use gold or silver for, then why do we want the dollar bill? It just takes away, again, our freedom and liberty to do the things we want to do. It just becomes another control, puts us further into slavery, makes us further slaves to a common master. So Woodrow Wilson and Colonel Edward Norton House, along with so many other brilliant people, come up with what's called the Trading with the Enemies Act. Now, the Trading with the Enemies Act is a law that states that any American in possession of large amounts of gold or silver must take said gold or silver and give it to the government. They must turn it over and give it to the government. And in exchange, the government would give them dollar bills in the amount of what gold and silver they just gave them. And the reason why this was necessary was because World War I had just happened, and they didn't want Americans to circumvent their government, meaning America had said, you know what, we just had this World War, we beat the Germans and we beat these other guys, and we don't want you trading with them. We don't want you giving them any kind of money because we don't agree with what they were doing. In some other countries, a bunch of other countries, we don't agree with that. So the way we're going to control you being able to do trade with them is to say, you have to take our currency, because our currency is not accepted in their country right now. They don't accept our currency, we don't accept their currency, we don't trade. So we're going to say, you have to give us all your gold and silver so that you can't do any trade with this country as well, and we're going to give you dollar bills instead. We call it the Trading with the Enemies Act. Literally, we don't want you trading with our enemies, so we're going to force you to give us your large amounts of gold or silver, and we're going to give you dollar bills instead. Now, you'll be able to exchange those dollar bills at a Federal Reserve back for their worth in gold or silver in the future in smaller sums, but who's to even say? Is there even an actual number on the law as how much gold or silver is the threshold for too much, where you might be charged with trading with the enemies? No, it's not even in there. So it's very vague to begin with. But here we go. Forces every American to give up their gold or silver. And you know what happens? They give up their gold or silver unwillingly. They give it up, forcefully give it up to the Federal Reserve, and they issue the dollar bills, which they don't say them on the dollar bills anymore. Google it, Wikipedia it. You'll find out, millennials, that once upon a time, every dollar bill, no matter what the denomination said, this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private, and may be exchanged at the Federal Reserve for its value in gold or silver. That last part was taken off in 1974 when Richard Nixon officially withdrew us from the gold standard, meaning that officially America's money was no longer based on any gold or silver, which is fine because 10 years earlier was when he initially did it, 1964, when it was initially done, but officially it was done in 1974. There's a difference between initially and officially. Initially, it was done in 1964 under a different president. Officially, it was done in 1974 under Richard Nixon. So that statement was taken off the dollar bills. But in 1920, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, it actually said that on every dollar bill. So here we are in the 1920s. World War I is over. America is booming industrially. We're making just mass products. Agrarians kind of falling behind, lagging a little bit, because so many people are trying to go to opportunities for industrial jobs, to move into these cities and to try and make things instead of working on farms and stuff. So that happens. The 1920s hit. We got what's called the Roaring 20s, where everybody's investing in things and everybody's having a good time. And it takes about 10 years because everyone's got to see this is a manipulation that comes in. The reason why the 1920s were booming was not because everyone was making lots of money. It was an illusion. It was fake. It was a counterfeit to build up and create something. And here's what it created. Here's what we're getting into. So if 1921, the boom starts to happen, really start to happen. And if you're an agrarian, or if you're someone who really just is steadfast against this whole money thing, and you're using gold and silver still, you're just a holdout on it, you're watching the value of the dollar bill just skyrocket because people are investing and using it like crazy, and the value of gold and silver is steadily dropping. But it's a manipulation. It's fake. It's being done that way on purpose as a counterfeit. So It's supposed to build confidence in people using the dollar, and it's supposed to break down confidence in people using gold and silver who are still investing and simply trading in that. And what it does is it causes the last little bits of holdout over the next 7 years, causes the next bit of holdouts to say, okay, look, the value is coming down too far. I might as well go ahead and jump on this money train. It looks like it's actually working, that this currency is coming out. It's booming like crazy. Everyone's investing in it. I might as well jump on it and see what money I can make off of it, what kind of profit I can make off of it. So I'm going to go ahead and release the vast sums of my gold or silver, and I'm going to go ahead and accept the dollar bills. And they do that. By 1927, pretty much everyone has gotten rid of the vast majority of the gold or silver. Very few holders left in the country, and America's Federal Reserve successfully contains vast amounts of gold or silver. And they realize something. Calculations are happening. Again, we get back to the basic supply and demand. What is a dollar worth based off the backing of it? $100 are worth 1 ounce, so 1/100th of an ounce. Well, no matter what the calculation is using for it, what the government realizes in about 1927, 1928 is that this is all the gold and silver they're going to get from the general population. That's it. It's pretty much done. It's just trickling in at this point. They've already reached the bell curve of the maximum input, and now they're on a downward trajectory of input as opposed to monetary output, meaning dollar bills. They're still printing because they're still printing dollar bills. So now the value is going to start going down. They're not getting any more gold and silver, really, not as much as they were. It's going down and down, but they're still printing more and more dollar bills because they have to meet the demand. That means those dollar bills are printing are becoming worth less and less, as well as the other dollar bills that are already in circulation. This is going to create a problem, and it creates a huge problem. What do we get? The stock market crash, the late 1920s. Why does the stock market crash? Again, fake. It's all fake. It was fake then, it's fake now. The stock market did crash. I'm not saying the stock market didn't crash. I'm saying the whole thing behind it is fake, an illusion, meant to create power. Now that we have all the gold and everyone has all the currency, we have to greatly devalue the dollar, because there's no reason why to keep paying the same level we're paying to continue to keep the same power. Like if we drop the price down to next to nothing, you don't have any more power because of it. You can't just drop the currency. There's nothing else to trade with. We took all the gold and silver, and you can't barter because the vast majority of you work in industrial trades. What are you going to do? Just leave your job and go out to the farm and start trying to farm again and live that way? Well, you can, but you're going to die of starvation before the first crop hits harvest, because it takes months to get a product going. You're just going to go out and buy cows? How are you going to pay for those cows? How are you going to pay for the hay? How are you going to take care of them? You don't have the money for it. Even working as a lowly industrial worker. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't have... And we get to decide what the money's worth. So, yeah, a cow was worth $100 today, but we just crashed the market. Now it's worth $1 million. Do you have $1 million? Oh, you don't? So you have to keep working there where you are for that measly income? I guess so. I guess you do. You don't have a choice in the matter. You're a slave. You've been put into slavery. You put yourself into slavery willingly. All we did was word it in such a way where you're like, that's a great idea. We have to do this. And guess what? You absolutely did not want to do that. So that's where, again, money goes from the end of the Civil War into the 1920s and 30s. We have the giant stock market crash, the devaluation of the dollar. Basically, everyone put into almost medieval times when it comes to living standards in America, simply because you needed to devalue the dollar in order to bring more control over the population. You got the population to move to central cities, and you did that by paying a lot of money, but that was the lure. You boosted the confidence of the people by boosting artificially the worth, the value of this dollar to get the last holdouts to give up gold and silver. And then once all the actual worth was collected, you devaluated what doesn't have any value so that you could give out more of it in the future. You need to be able to devalue it so that there's room to buffer to print more. Because in doing that, now you can decide how it gets distributed. You need to know how much value there is in the world, how much value you have, how you can distribute it, and why you want to distribute it. That's the story for another time as well. And it's bringing us into the 1930s and forward in history, and why we get into World War II, and how our government acts in World War II, how we in general act in World War II, and why it's coming to what all it is today.